Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is 1 o'clock on the very last day of January 2022, and I am happy to call this meeting to order, noting that we have all councillors in attendance, plus our staff, CAO, and Rob Voigt, Jessica Wiley, Courtney Allen, and Margaret Wilton Siegel. Welcome all. Matt Smith, sorry, Matt, and you're here with us as well. Welcome to all and to our listening public as well. And I will call this meeting to order. First off on our agenda this afternoon is our land acknowledgement, and I'll ask Councillor Vickers to read that for us, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands and treaty territory, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, which includes the Chippewa of Nawash unceded First Nation and the Chippewa of Saugeen First Nation. We also recognize the Métis, whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. We extend our gratitude to all Anishinaabe and Métis peoples and their descendants, past, present, and future, who continue to care for and inhabit these lands and tend these waters.
Thank you, Paul. Now I will ask you all to join me in a moment of reflection as we consider the business of the municipality before us. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of interest in any of the agenda items today, pecuniary or otherwise? Noting that should one arise during the course of the meeting, you may declare it at any time. And with that, we'll move on to announcements. Does anyone have an announcement to offer up today? I'm seeing now from council, so I will proceed with a few that we have from the administration. Of course, today was the day we've been waiting for when the province has started using restrictions once again. And that means our municipal offices and facilities are open. The office at 21 Trowbridge Street is open, and the front counter will be assisting for quick transactions and inquiries such as paying property taxes, dog tags, garbage tags, parking tickets, that sort of thing. And the filing of planning and building applications. We are asking that if you have a longer need for staff attention, please call the number 519-538-1060 or email info@Meaford to book an appointment. So Meaford Hall and Meaford and St. Vincent Community Centre, arena, recreation programs, and community halls are all open, but at 50% capacity. And of course, the health care protocols, masks and distancing are still appropriate. So we are insisted upon, in fact. We We have a couple of surveys that are ongoing. The first one is the official plan. Online survey is available on the website, and hard copies are also available at the municipal administration office. Just really excited to announce that we have 305 responses to date on the official plan, which is really very, very good and very excellent responses, considering they're asking for some detailed thinking to respond to the questions. Good work, everyone. There's a strategic plan for Meaford Hall Arts and Cultural Center underway as well. And of course, we seek your input through that online survey as well. But there will also be focus group meetings conducted for that effort, the strategic plan. The survey is available online on our website, and hard copies again are available at the administration office. And again, the response has been great. Folks are really responding well to surveys at this point. The last announcement I have is that our administration is looking for to hire a number of seasonal and full-time positions. And so I invite anyone with any interest in this to visit the website and to pass it on to someone else you might think might have an interest as well. So with that, we'll move on to the public participation. We do encourage and welcome the public to join us either, when we can in person. We hope that comes up very soon, but virtually for now. And to participate in the business of the council meetings, we ask that you contact the clerk's office before noon and for public meetings, and before 10 o'clock, excuse me, on the day of the council meetings to participate in the council meeting. So we have two presentations this afternoon. The first one is Paul Wagenaar of the United Way of Grey Bruce regarding food insecurity in Grey County. And it is a pleasure to welcome with Paul, Barb Fetty, and Jill Umbach, who have from Grey County. So welcome all. We're happy to have you join us today.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. We'd like to discuss food insecurity in our region, as well as the tool to help build awareness of this issue. Food insecurity is a hidden issue in many of our communities, and not having enough food affects far more people than most of us realize. We need to inform, to educate, to correct misconceptions, and demonstrate the size and scope of this issue. Can we go to the next slide, please? Sorry. Any conversation about food insecurity begins with the size of our region. We encompass almost 8,000 square kilometers, the same area as the GTA. In that area, there are 22 food banks, 19 meal programs, and 15 community gardens. These organizations are mostly run by volunteers. If we go to the next slide, please. Funding is a significant issue for many organizations that struggle to meet the increasing demands of food insecurity. The precarious nature of funding changes from year to year, and many times the organizations are only advised that funding has been approved days before the previous funding runs out. In fact, last year, 3 programs suspended operations for this reason. Could we go to the next slide, please? The lack of connectivity between organizations is another major issue. Many food organizations have grown organically in isolation. Some exist in silos, and as a result, they don't share protocols or ideas. Unfortunately, this has also contributed to keeping the issue out of the public's mind. If we go to the next slide, please. The lack of a reliable and timely method of sharing food between organizations is also a significant issue, as many rely on an ad hoc volunteer network of seniors in their cars. If we go to the next slide, please. Food organizations provide their services in some of the most challenging and changeable weather conditions anywhere as well. Not only is winter driving difficult, in summer, hot weather threatens food spoilage as well. Next screen, please. One of the best things about living in a small town or city is that everybody knows everyone else and pulls together. Unfortunately, this is also one of the biggest problems. Many people are embarrassed by their situations and oftentimes would rather go hungry than to have to approach their neighbors for help or even to admit that they need help. Seniors will quite often avoid using support because they believe that other people need help more than they do. Repeated studies show that only 1 person in 4 who should use a food bank actually does, and stigma is one of the leading reasons for that. Misconceptions also affect food insecurity. One of the most common ones is the lack of understanding about best before dates and expiry dates, which can lead to unnecessary food waste. If we can go to the next slide, please. Most importantly, people, the media, and decision makers are largely unaware of the size and scope of food insecurity. They see how wealthy our communities are, and they see the amount of food that seems to be available. When they do happen to think about food insecurity, typically they only think about food banks and will donate some canned or dry goods and feel that they've contributed to solving the food problem. Food banks, despite all of the good work they do, are at best a band-aid, and at worst, they lull people into not appreciating the real causes of food insecurity. We need to educate people that food insecurity is only a symptom of poverty, and in particular, the lack of safe and affordable housing. Currently, because of skyrocketing prices for renting and for owning a home, many people are paying 80, 90, and even 100% of their income on housing, leaving little for other expenses. Many people are surprised that increasingly more middle-class families are suffering from food insecurity. We can go to the next slide, please. Food banks, despite all of the good work they do, food banks, despite all of the good, missed a slide there. The problems with the perception that food banks are the only solution for food insecurity include that food banks typically only provide 3 or 4 days worth of food each month. Many limit their clients to only 1 visit per month. Clients still have to prove that they're poor enough, which can be very degrading, and the lack of food choices can be challenging. And many food banks don't stock fresh fruits or vegetables because of the potential of spoiling. In addition, stigma can exist because some of the volunteers have preconceived ideas about deserving and undeserving. But please don't get me wrong, food banks do great work, but they're only part of the solution. If you go to the next slide, please. Given all of these issues and more besides, what we're trying to do is build collaboration and connection between all the food organizations and communities to remove silos, to encourage the sharing of good practices, and to remove stigma. If we can go to the next slide, please. To make people aware and to engage decision makers, we needed a tool to inform, to educate, and to correct those misconceptions. To do that, we needed more than just anecdotal information. We needed real data and the ability to communicate that data. There was a tool already, the biannual hunger reports. The problem with the hunger reports were that they were only produced every other year, so the data was old even before they were first released. The reports weren't readily accessible, and not every organization participated in the data collection. Something better was needed. If you can go to the next slide, please. An idea from the United Way of Bruce Gray was actualized in action by NPX, and they developed a new tool in only 6 weeks. This tool shows the size and scope of the food insecurity issue in Bruce Gray. It's clear and it's concise, it's easy to use. It makes use of the data that's already being collected by the overstretched volunteers. It's available immediately to any level of government or the organizations themselves, media or the public, and it really allows the start of conversations about who's hungry in our communities. If we go to the next slide, please. This is that new tool, the website foodbrucegray.com. Go to the next slide, please. There are 3 data entry screens for each type of organization. Each was designed to use whatever data the organizations were already producing. And even if they're not collecting all of the data points, the website will still take that into account. It was very important for us not to create more work for our volunteers. Go to the next slide, please. The first of the 6 graphs on the website measures the contributions made by the community meal programs. Interestingly, public awareness of meal programs was almost non-existent. In Bruce Gray, the demand grew by more than 300% during the pandemic, despite a dramatic reduction in the number of volunteers able to assist with meal distribution. When you take a look at the screen, you'll notice that go to the next slide, please.
Not there.
Yeah, if we could go to the next slide, please. No, back one. Back another one, please. There we go. All right, if you notice that there's quite a drop off in December, that isn't because we magically solved the food insecurity problem, because we rely on volunteers. When I prepared this slide, we hadn't had all of the data. When you look at the total meals distributed at 304,000, It actually ended up by the end of December being close to 320,000. You can also go in and look at all of the different organizations by using the drop-down menu. The plateauing of demand that you see has less to do with the lack of demand than it does with the lack of capacity. I'd like to highlight the contribution made by Gilles Haget and his team. They were one of the largest contributors to meal programs in the two counties. Their program ceased this summer, but we're thrilled that they're back now working with the Anglican Church on a limited program. If we can go to the next slide, please. According to Second Harvest Canada, 58% of all the food in Canada is wasted. Food Rescue is trying to change that. On a local scale, Food Rescue tries to divert food, and by working with our local grocery stores and local businesses and farmers, more of this food is now being used to help vulnerable people and food insecure people across the two counties. 110 tons, basically, were diverted in the last 2 years to help with this. If we go to the next screen, please. This is the first of two graphs on food banks. Please note the time period that's selected or can be selected by the users for it. The weight of food distributed at 305 tons, the number of food hampers at over 29,000. Food bank demand was increased, but was relatively steady in our region because of the CERB, which had the effect of being a basic universal income. The Meaford Food Bank has been one of the most innovative food banks of all the different food banks in Grey Bruce. For example, they're the only food bank offering evening hours for clients who are unable to attend the food bank during the day. If we can go to the next slide, please. The demographic screen for food bank shows income sources and age breakdowns for clients. The bottom graph shows the age demographics. Please note the green represents children, yellow adults, and the red seniors. We go to the next slide, please. This graph shows the contribution community gardeners are making to help with food insecurity. The difference between the two graphs is the top graph shows food produced in total by the community gardens, and graph 2 shows the food that's being donated to food banks and meal programs. I'd like to take a moment to commend Simona Freeberg and her team of volunteers for the tremendous work that they've done with the Meaford Community Gardens. They not only have some of the finest gardens in Grey Bruce, but they also provide inspiration to many other communities throughout the two counties in their support of these programs. Next slide, please. The final graph shows the thousands of hours that volunteers have provided to help with food insecurity in our regions. If you had to put a dollar value on it using volunteer.ca's figures, it's over $1 million that they've contributed to help with food insecurity. We go to the next slide, please. This NPX tool is unique in Canada. It's been showcased on Tamarack, on TVO, the CBC, the Toronto Star, various local media, as well as it was a finalist in the Pillar Community Innovation Awards. We send invitations to every mayor, chief, MPP, and MP, as well as every media outlet in the region to inform them about this tool and to encourage them to use it to start conversations about food insecurity in their communities. We can go to the next slide, please. The tool foodburstgrade.com gathers data and helps to engage our communities and create action plans. The tool is being utilized to help focus new and existing programming for grant applications. Several municipalities have posted it on their website and also for our local media. We go to the next slide, please. We have challenges. We need to continue to have organizations share their data. People need to use that collective data to spur more conversations and solutions on food insecurity with decision makers like yourselves. We also need to expand food rescue. Go to the next slide, please. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today and appreciate your support in helping to illuminate this large but mostly hidden issue. I covered a lot of information very quickly, and if you have any questions, we would be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Very, very interesting, and of course, very disturbing as well. I just want to say at the top that how very, very appreciative we are of the wonderful volunteers we have in our community who are helping with our problems and with our food security issues. You know, Simone, as you've mentioned, Gilles Haget has been just immensely popular, but also such a huge help in our community to to help with this issue. It's astounding when you think of the number of meals that he prepared over many, many months, upwards of 700 at one point, I'm told, and all with volunteer help. It's really quite amazing. But I know too that that's a drop in the bucket when it comes to food insecurity within the two counties. So thank you for your kind thoughts, and on their behalf, we certainly appreciate Nellie Greb too, who is our chair of our food bank and who played such a pivotal role in our community wellness and safety plan development and ongoing with our advisory committee in that regard. So it's we're very, very aware of and appreciate the immense problem that we have here. And I'm not familiar with this program that you've offered, but certainly we'll look into it further and see if our we'll encourage our food bank to do the same. Thank you very much for your presentation. Any comments or question from Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Mr. Wagenaar, for your presentation. I did have a question for you. On the very first slide, you suggested that a living wage for Bruce Gray would be $18.39. And I'm wondering if Bruce Gray United Way or United Way as an organization plays a role in advocacy to the province to increase the minimum wage from the current $15 to at least closer to a living wage.
I'll let Jill address that because that's one of her areas of expertise.
Thank you very much.
Jill.
Yes, the United Way is a member of Living Wage Ontario, and therefore collectively we've been able to advocate towards the government to reduce the precarious work, to move towards more of a livable wage. Just recently, last Thursday, to be precise, we participated in consultations with the Ontario government, with the Ministry of Finance. And we did have many manufacturers and other business people at that table speaking with the Ontario government. In particular, it was members from the Ministry of Finance about a livable wage, as well as looking at the benefits and other aspects that would provide people with a more secure income and with benefits with regards to sick days that would allow people to isolate under the pandemic and then get back to work afterwards. And we also spoke to factors related to childcare, because that's another big area that we are short on that would enable more women to return to the workforce.
Thank you, Jill. Councillor Greenfield, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Paul, for your presentation. Interesting. I think one of your slides demonstrated there were 320,000 meals last year, and I don't know if there's any significance. There's about 165,000 residents in Gray and Bruce, so that's about 2 meals per person if you want to break it down that way. I'm just wondering, it's quite often that we think those in need are the poor, are the homeless, are those working for minimum wage or low wage, perhaps the elderly. But I'm just wondering, if there are folks in our twin counties who are making a very good wage. I can think of people, at least a family, a couple making $75,000 a year. If they're paying off a $500,000 mortgage, have a couple of children, have to have a couple of cars on the road to get to and from work, do we have those presumably fairly well-to-do people going to the food bank? Is it? I think it's likely primarily the lower income people, but how wide does this problem cover? Thank you.
Covers. Yeah, it's a good question. It covers all of those demographics and more. In Clarksburg, Reverend Bocut runs a meal program. And the day that I was visiting him, there was a gentleman in line that was driving a BMW. And he was getting food from the meal program. And, like you said, in a lot of cases, people would look at him and say that, he was incredibly wealthy. But through COVID, he had lost his job. He had enough money to cover his mortgage, but it didn't leave any money for anything else. Anecdotally, there was another story when I was visiting the Paisley Food Bank. There was a young gentleman there. He said he only had a few minutes because he had to get back to work. Was working 40 hours a week. He was a heavy equipment operator, but he was living in his truck. He couldn't find anywhere in Paisley to live. So when we talk about, food insecurity, because of the situation with skyrocketing prices for houses and for rental places, people can't afford to live here. And, if they are here, quite a few of them, regardless of their demographic, are spending, 80 or 90% of their income just to put a roof over their heads, which has really created the food insecurity issue that we're seeing. When the pandemic began, demands, really went up because of the pandemic. What's sustaining that pressure now is the housing crisis that we have. And again, just the pressure that people are under from, there just isn't enough money for them.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you both, Ed, and you and Jill, for your presentation this afternoon, answering the questions. It is truly a significant endeavor, and we wish you well with it. We will certainly do try however we can to help. Thank you very much for coming and joining us today.
If I could ask one small thing for you to maybe consider, quite a few of the municipalities have put a link to the website on their sites. If that's something that you would consider, that would be wonderful.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, have a great afternoon.
Thanks so much. Our second presenter this afternoon is John Mikkelsen from the Ontario Pump Storage with a project update. And we welcome you, John. There you are.
Yep. My apologies.
No worries. Floor is yours.
Your worship, members of council, good afternoon. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity this afternoon to provide you with an update on the Ontario Pumped Storage Project. Once again, I regret that we're doing this virtually. I look forward to the day when we can do these meetings once again in person. Despite the restrictions of COVID, we've made steady progress with our project over the past year. The project has reached a significant milestone in July with the decision of the Department of National Defence. And subject to receiving all permits and approvals and demonstrating no impact to D&D's activities at the 4th Canadian Division Training Centre, we are able to proceed with the development and the construction of the project. In the near term, it permits us to proceed with the environmental impact assessment. As well, over this past year, we've seen changes in the external environment that have impacted what we're proposing. The impacts of climate change are more obvious. The demand for action on climate change is intensifying, and the pathway to net zero will mean increased use of electricity, driving higher demand. There is an increased need for large-scale, long-duration electricity storage to balance electricity demand with available supply. This project, if developed, would be an important contributor to achieving a zero-emission electricity system. Next slide, please. Our focus this afternoon is to summarize the progress we've made on the environmental front. We understand and we're very much aware that there are other concerns and interests of the community, and we plan to present additional information on those subjects over the coming months. We've listened, we've made changes, and we are committed to protecting Georgian Bay. And I look forward to telling you about our plan. Next slide, please. This image represents a cutaway of the proposed facilities. It represents the culmination of a lot of changes over the last 2 years that were in response to feedback that we received from the public. The first thing that you will note is that except for the reservoir, switchyard, and office, all of the major facilities are now underground or underwater. We heard concerns about fish and fish habitat. So we relocated the intake and outlet from the shoreline to deep water where we expect less sensitive fish habitat. To get to the deep water, we're tunneling. We plan to tunnel from the reservoir out under Georgian Bay, and in particular under the sensitive shoreline environment, leaving it intact. Major components, the pump turbines, generators, transformers, are located underground in a cavern. This minimizes surface disruption, terrestrial impacts, environmental, archaeological, historical, cultural, and visual. With the major equipment deep underground, we've effectively mitigated any audible noise. One new refinement is the replacement of the previous concept of a manifold of inlet and outlet ports with this bulb-like tunnel structure. This design permits us to use a single tunnel boring machine. It starts on land, it proceeds out under Georgian Bay, makes a big loop, and then returns to land. It's a more elegant design from a hydraulic perspective. It's also simpler and easier to construct. Next slide, please. The same infrastructure is used for both pumping and generating. When we want to store electricity, as is shown in this particular image, we would use that electricity to pump water from Georgian Bay to the new reservoir we're constructing on top of the escarpment. Water will be pumped at low velocity through a series of multiple inlet-outlet ports under the surface of Georgian Bay to the storage reservoir and stored there until needed. Next slide, please. When power demand is high, typically during the day, water will be released from the reservoir and via the same underground tunnels passes through power turbine generators located in that deep underground cavern, generate electricity, and then the water is returned at low velocity to multiple inlet-outlet ports to Georgian Bay. Next slide, please. So I mentioned these inlet-outlet ports. I'm very excited about this innovative component and its potential to protect the aquatic environment of Georgian Bay. So I thought maybe we'd take a minute just to describe the design and what they are expected to do. There'll be 20 of these inlet-outlet ports located in deep water. Each of these will be connected to the tunnel under the lake bed through a vertical pipe bored down through the lake bed. The ports themselves are like tall vertical cylinders with screens all around and a cap on the top and on the bottom. They'll be located off the lake bed and well below the surface. The caps will restrict the outflow and inflow to the horizontal direction. Screens on the inlet-outlet ports provide a protective barrier for fish, preventing them from entering the system. And the screen surface is sized so that the speed of water that flows through them is less than 1 kilometer an hour, equivalent to a slow walking speed. The speed of that movement is designed to be less than the speed at which fish can swim away, and thus preventing fish from being pulled against the screens. The inlet-outlet ports are located off the lake bed, sufficiently high enough to avoid stirring up any material that might exist there. Next slide, please. The multiple inlet-outlet ports, and we're expecting about 20 of them, will be positioned well below the lake's surface, presenting no impact to recreational lake users. Next slide, please. So in addition to the facilities that I've described that will be located at the Meaford Tank Range, the proposed facility will also require a transmission connection to Ontario's power grid. In our engagement, we heard concerns about the environmental and the visual impacts of overhead, overland transmission lines. As a result of that community feedback, we made a decision to advance a transmission route underwater on the lake bed of Georgian Bay from the project site to a location near Wasaga Beach, and then underground from there to the Stainer Transformer Station. And from Stainer, the existing Hydro One electricity system will be upgraded between the Stainer Transformer Station and the ultimate destination of the Hydro One ESSA Transformer Station to accommodate the project needs. Transmission routing will be a significant component of the environmental impact assessment process for the overall project. And as I said, an underground route using proven, safe technology is what we're advancing based on public input. Next slide, please. We're often asked, has this been done before? And I thought I might share some photos of a project currently under construction in Toronto. The Ashbridges Bay Water Treatment Plant is undertaking some significant upgrades, including a new outfall. This is a project that is in construction now under Lake Ontario and using similar design and construction practices as we are proposing for the Ontario Pump Storage Project. These photos are from the tunnel. They are employing a tunnel boring machine similar to what we're proposing, and they plan to bore 3.5 kilometers out under the floor of Lake Ontario. The curved concrete sections that you see here on the left are assembled to form the finished tunnel as the boring machine advances. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the in-water construction facilities at Asbridges Bay from earlier this year. The final outlet ports and risers that will connect to the tunnel are being constructed in parallel with the tunnel boring operation. The structures on the right that you see in the water are temporary construction facilities, and they will be removed following construction. They consist of sleeves, a large diameter pipe that reaches down into the lake bed, and it contains all of the construction activities, separating the working space from Lake Ontario and ensuring that construction materials do not contaminate the lake. We would envision using a very similar approach to construct the risers for the Ontario Pump Storage Project. Next slide, please. Again, I want to thank you for this opportunity this afternoon. Our commitment: we will continue to listen, we will continue to incorporate changes based on what we hear, and we are committed to protecting Georgian Bay and making the Ontario Pump Storage Project something we can all be proud of. I'm very happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, for this informative presentation. We too are very, very anxious to learn more about the environmental assessments and studies that you are going to be involved with. But in the meantime, we certainly appreciate your attempts to keep us informed as to the progress and the state of your project, and your concern with Georgian Bay and the environmental issues, of course, mirror our own. We appreciate that. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon, and for your frequent opportunities to engage the public. We appreciate that as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing nothing further, we'll move on. There are no deputations on agenda items, and there are no further public questions. So we'll move on now then to public inquiries. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks very much, Your Worship. And I had a question, if I may, today for Jessica. Council will all be aware that over the past week or two, we've had some emails from residents concerned about potholing. And I just wondered, Jessica, if I could ask you for a refresher for us and for the residents who are listening. Can you talk to us about the standards for size of potholes and timelines related to repair, and how people should best get in touch with you when something arises in short order, probably most likely due to weather or construction or something of that nature?
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair. Potholes are always a hot topic. As we all well know, the biggest challenges are when we have freeze thaws, and I'm saying this as we're minus double digits today and 2 degrees tomorrow. So it's this type of weather that creates those types of issues, unfortunately. Without going into all of the details, because really the size of pothole also depends on the type of road class and whether it's gravel versus asphalt versus surface treatment. There's a lot of different size requirements. And maybe that's something that we can do a better job at communicating to the public, which is a good opportunity for us to put some more information out there on maybe the more detailed parts of that question. But I think ultimately we always have staff out dealing with pothole issues. The best thing that you can do, honestly, is to contact our roads, either our email account or our phone number, which we can also do another job, better, maybe get it out there to the public a bit more as a reminder of the best place to get in touch with us. That way we're tracking the information. We can follow up with the resident, which people often like to know that we've all received the information and this is what we're doing about it. And we try really hard to provide that level of customer service. So it is probably the best that they do contact us directly. And then that way we can follow up with them directly too. But generally, it is fairly quick. Like, as long as there's no snow event that's occupying everyone's time, that is our number one priority. If people aren't plowing snow, it is fixing pothole issues in our road system. So it is something that should be happening fairly quickly.
Thank you, Jess. Councillor Greenfield and then Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, a question directed towards Jessica. Another infrastructure question, maybe not quite as technical as the first, but it is the last day of January, Jessica, and I'm hoping that this indicates at least the halfway point through our winter season. And with budget talks coming later today, I always have the budget on my mind. Can you give us an update on how we're doing with winter roads products, salt, sand, how our fuel supplies are holding out to supply the trucks? Can you help us out on that, please? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not going to jinx anything by commenting on the length of time we have left with winter. But great question. So I took a peek at what our levels of sand salt are at different yards, considering where we're at in the winter season. So far, things are fairly normal. We aren't at the moment concerned about shortages. We have about what we would normally have at this time of year at both yards. We do have the luxury that if one may run a bit lower than the other, that we can transport between the two, but ultimately supply of both sand and salt products seem to be where we would expect them to be at this time of year. With that being said, the biggest challenge for us is always icy conditions. So again, back to the when things are warm and then they get cold and then they get warm again, or if we have freezing rain events like we have seen in the past in February, March. But as of right now, I feel like we're in a good position for what we need to finish out the rest of the season. So as long as everything stays as normal as it can be. Fuel, there's nothing unusual there either. I think everything seems to be about, again, where we would expect it to be with this time of year, given the amount of vehicles that are out on a regular basis. So I don't think there's any abnormalities. And we also don't have any concerns at this point. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. And Councillor Kentner and Councillor Bartley. You're muted, Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I have three questions actually, and I am more than happy. They're all to do with the budget, and I'm happy to deal with them individually, although they're related. But so it's your call. If there are more questions, I'll be glad to take another turn. Anyway, these are for our CAO, Mr. Armstrong. We have a provision for relief from tax increases for seniors below a certain income threshold. And we have a component of older homeowners. So I'm just wondering if take up on the program is anywhere near proportional to their numbers. That's the first question.
Through your worship, I'm going to ask Val if she can respond to the financial questions that are being put forward.
Thank you.
Welcome, Val.
Hi. Through you, Madam Mayor. The senior program that we have in place was established in 2019. At that time, there was a couple that had applied, but they didn't really apply. They just inquired, and then we sent them information, and there was no response for application. Since then, in 2021, the county has passed a bylaw for seniors as well. So I think we have a dual bylaw, a dual system, and I think ours probably has become redundant, and I think we need to follow the county. So I'm sure I will be bringing a report back to indicate that. The county's is pretty much the same as what ours was. So at that time, I'll give you a report for that.
Sure. Could I just ask you to, if you would mind reiterating how it works?
So currently, it has a $50,000. I looked at that this morning. It has a $50,000
income threshold?
Yeah, and it's like a write-off of, I think it was going to cancel the taxes for about $500. And I think the county is showing the same information. But we do need to do a better job of advertising it, because currently I don't believe that we do. So once we get the one program in place, I think we'll start advertising that on our website. And I believe it was through the well-being plan that was kind of being adopted as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the 30 action items in the community safety and wellbeing plan is specifically to promote this better. So as Val says, once we've sort of settled on the county's one, we'll be really trying to push that out with some of our messaging and encourage people to apply, because I think it's an important program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As I say, Madam Mayor, I have two other questions related, but if you'd like, I'll come back.
Before you do that, our CAO had his hand up. So did you want to comment now?
Sorry, Your Worship. The only other thing I will add is that the county CAOs, we had a discussion about this program, about the uptake across the county. And the response was it's very low across the entire county. Most people had either zero or just one application for this program. So I look forward to us being able to promote it further, as mentioned by Matt and Val.
Okay. Thank you.
It certainly seems to me that, given our populace, I think there should be more demand for it, in my view. I just don't know if people know about it. And secondly, municipalities currently have the flexibility to target tax relief for small businesses through the adoption of the small business property subclass. And I wonder if we've availed ourselves of that.
So that actually is at the county level, that they have to make the subclass available. I did inquire this morning to MTE, who is the consultant for the county and us, obviously. So right now there's currently, I think, and I just can't find that email right this second. Currently there is like 962 farm properties, of which 4 or 40.42% have the CVA for this commercial subclass. And so that threshold, it reflects that $50,000 as well. From what Peter told me this morning, there's 2 of those properties will move up to 100,000. So there's a really small percentage that's going to affect the properties here, but it does have to be accepted at the county level. And currently last year we had opted to postpone it at least till this year.
It appears the province will apply a reduced business education tax rate to a new $100,000 threshold for all eligible properties. And it should just, I guess it's MPAC is going to identify those eligible properties and notify the property owners and municipalities apparently by March.
Yeah, and that will come out as special amended notices from MPAC. We haven't got those yet.
Okay, and then really the question I was asking at this point, I'm sorry, that was my third question, but the second question is about small business property subclass. Have we taken advantage of that?
No, because that has to get done through the county. So it's a county level, and then we just follow what the county as a whole is doing.
Well, the information I have is that municipalities can submit a request to the minister for matching municipal reductions for 2022. And the municipality actually has to provide the bylaw that would outline the program. the estimated tax relief for small businesses, and a summary of the consultations held with business stakeholders. So
I can follow up again with the consultant to make sure I'm not misunderstanding what he's told me, but as of right now, we have not done that.
Yeah, I see that we have an opportunity working with the province to help seniors with their tax increases, small business, which has certainly suffered through the pandemic, and also this other category of farm or small scale on farm business subclass. And so I just hope that we can do whatever is available for our ratepayers, because we are going to have a tax increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kentner. Councillor Bartley, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have two inquiries, and the first one will go to Jessica again over potholes. Jessica, I've seen your crew out many times. They do a wonderful job. I just wanted to know what the thought process was coming from your department on standards. I know we follow the Ontario minimum standards, but just please verify that the people don't go out, say, no, you got another centimeter to go on that pothole before it meets the time to fix it, and you fix it anyways. Can you just verify that we're trying to be proactive on these potholes?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, for sure. We're always trying to be proactive. It's a tricky thing to stay on top of, for sure. We do have patrollers who are out every day, all day, making sure that, from 12 o'clock in the morning until the end of the day, checking for this. We're making sure that all of the all of the roads are drivable, everything is safe, and that always includes potholes. So if our staff aren't catching them, we always make sure that we follow up with resident inquiries, whether someone might say it's small or large, it doesn't matter. We always want to make sure that everything is safe. So yes, we're being proactive. No, we're not nitpicking, I guess is kind of what you're saying. And we're always trying to make sure that all of our surfaces are as safe and usable as possible. And we definitely try to follow up with those residents as well and make sure that we explain to them maybe why something might not be fixed right away. Like whatever the rationale is, we make sure that we provide people the information that they need to feel comfortable.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Over to you, Rob. I thought I saw you pop up there. Did you want to make a comment? No? Okay. And back to you, Deputy Mayor, for an inquiry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and not really an inquiry, and perhaps you might like to jump in yourself, but I just wanted to, with your permission, respond a little bit to Councillor Kentner's suggestions. And certainly I would love to help small businesses and our agricultural operations and so on, but I think we also have to remember, reflecting on the conversation at the Grey County Council table, that those taxes have to be paid by somebody. And if the small business taxes are reduced, then it falls back on residential taxpayers, because the taxes, have to be raised, whatever is determined is needed. So I just wanted to reassure everyone that there was a fulsome conversation on this matter at County Council, but it really came back to the fact that if those reductions were made, it would fall back on residential taxpayers. So, Your Worship, I'll turn it over to you if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point to make, and just to follow up with that our staff are very diligent on all fronts, looking for tax savings and for programs that they can bring forward to help our residents. So I think that they will be on top of that situation as well. Thank you all for that. No further inquiries. Then we will move on to point 8 on our agenda. The first one is a consent agenda. And sorry, Rob, did you want to add something?
I think Councillor Bartley had 2 questions, Madam Mayor, that he had raised to ask.
I beg your pardon, Councillor Bartley. I thought you were finished.
No,
please go ahead.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I can't hear.
Question I was going to Rob Armstrong, and I was going to do it actually off of council meeting, but I'll put it here. Received many emails and phone calls about the cemetery's entrance. Is there any plans on doing something with the cemetery's entrance? And can we use the money that we got for the sale of the back of the cemetery to do that?
I'll actually take that one, Madam Mayor. So I think
Thanks,
within the plans for this year is the development of a cemetery master plan. So that cemetery master plan will look at lots of different aspects of cemetery operations, including whether we need to lay out more plots, whether we should have more columbariums and so on, but it'll also consider how we should use the grounds. And so I think it's really important that we do that. And a big part of that public consultation will be about how the cemetery looks and how it feels to people going in to visit and so on. So right now, there's no plan to actually do physical work at that entrance, because we want to go and get that public consultation to get input from absolutely everybody about what it is that they want as part of that master plan. And then we'll be coming back to council and say, this is what the master plan's recommending. And so we'll then look to do something going forwards.
Thank you. So that would mean that public consultation may happen this year?
It will, yes.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Councillor Kentner, I saw your hand.
I would just comment, if I may, that what the people want is what they already have or had. They just want it back. They'd like to see that fountain restored, and they'd like to see the grounds kept. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kentner. I think it's important to note that people who've contacted you have asked for that. Others may have different opinions. And it may well be that the master plan says we should go back to what's there already and have that repaired and done properly, or a new fountain and so on. But we need to go and get that input from people, and everybody will have the chance to do so.
Well said. Thank you. Anything further from council? Okay, then we are on now to 8.1 is a consent agenda, which we do not need this meeting. So 8.2 is items for consideration, and we have one, DEV 2022-01, and the corresponding bylaw 2022-02 is a zoning amendment. And the recommendation reads, be it resolved that bylaw 2021-02, being a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw 60-2009, pertaining to 439001 Sydenham-Lakeshore Drive, and to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement, and that be taken as read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bell and Councillor Greenfield. Thank you. Comments, questions pertaining to that? No, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's moving forward as approved. Yes, that is approved. Thank you. At this point, we'll move into a committee of the whole. The mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bartley, and Deputy Mayor. Thank you. All in favor of moving into committee of the whole? That is carried. And the first item on this is the CAO 2022-02, the Council Strategic Priorities Update. And the recommendation reads that Committee of the Whole receive report CAO 2022-02, Council Strategic Priorities Update for information purposes. And I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Kentner and Councillor Vickers. Again, comments, open the floor for comments or questions for staff on this. I thought the report was very, very well done, Rob, and was really quite pleased with the progress that we have seen to date on our 4-year mandate coming up on our last year of this term. Deputy Mayor.
Your Worship, thank you. And I also wanted to express appreciation to staff for all they've accomplished over this past couple of years, despite everything. I just wanted to ask a question. under the point of attraction and retention, and we know that Grey County is doing just outstanding work in this area, and I'm just wondering if staff can speak to that collaboration with the county in areas such as this for partnerships and collaborations with their newcomer efforts.
Thank you, Worship. One of Janet's job as strategic initiatives coordinator is to be part of the Grey County group. And what the position we typically have taken is to try to build on what they've done and not duplicate. So I think Janet has been working with the county on that. And I don't know if she's on the call or not, or could elaborate to some of the stuff that's been going on there. But yeah, that's the general principle that we take in that partnership side.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rob. Is that a further follow-up there, Deputy Mayor?
No, just a second question, unless we were waiting to hear from Janet.
I don't see Janet on the call.
Yeah, that's okay. We can get you further information on just some of the more detailed aspects of that. Not a problem.
That would be terrific, Your Worship, and Rob, thank you. I was also going to ask about the census data. I believe that's coming up fairly shortly. I just wondered, Rob, if you knew when we would have access to that. And once we receive it, we'll be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can invest in further detail that might help us gain a better understanding of our workforce needs, for example, that would then help us understand how much affordable housing we need. Will we be able to delve into the census in that regard?
I think that's probably one of the things that we might be looking at doing under the wellbeing plan as well, because a lot of that information will sort of inform how we can best move forward with some of those plans. So I'm sure we can find some cash to get at least some additional data when it becomes available from StatsCan. That does generally become available a little bit after the general census data is released rather than immediately.
And I know our intent, through Your Worship, is as soon as that data becomes available, we want to update our community profiles that we've developed in the past with regard to economic development promotion. Because a lot of people who are looking to invest in our community look for that information as part of their decisions and their reports that they're required to prepare.
Mm-hmm.
When that actually comes available, like we just know it's going to be this year, early this year.
Okay. Any further questions? Councillor Kentner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you, just a comment. I'm excited about our strategic priorities, and I do believe we've made progress. But I also know that people on some of the advisory committees find that meeting every 2 months is not exactly setting the world on fire. And I know they're anxious to get some things done, and especially with respect to economic development. And I'm wondering, if there isn't anything we can do to just put a keener edge on our efforts because of the importance of this coming out of the pandemic. We've got a lot to do to try and keep body and soul together in our municipality, and it would be good if they could, if we could turn them loose, I guess is what I'm saying, a little bit more than this every other month meeting. What I see on your chart is that, this year we decided to do that, and next year we're going to do it, and it's not very compelling, is my comment. And I would like to ask if there isn't any methodology for speeding up, especially the focus on economic development. Thank you.
Over to you, Rob, to respond.
Yeah, just with regard to meetings, advisory groups are to be advisory on things that
specific items
are either coming from a consultant or coming from staff, and it really comes down to our ability to develop that stuff for the advisory stuff to come forward. And the every other month seems to be within our current capacity to bring to those committees, and that's why we have set the every other month aspect. They will be busy over the next little bit with all of the different elements that we do have going on, and hoping the Heritage Conservation District plan, the official plan update, they'll be looking for input on that stuff. So there will be certain aspects. And if there is a need to meet more regularly and our capacity to do that is there, then we will do it. But that's why we sort of have it set at the 2-month right now.
Thank you for that, Rob. Deputy Mayor?
A final question, if I may, Your Worship, for Mr. Armstrong. On page 10, under Council Strategic Goal of Ensuring Sustainability, we talk about facilitating attainable housing, and I'm just wondering if there's any potential for suggesting a change to that now that we're sort of more in a mode of looking at, to use your term, housing for all. And I'm just wondering if we did that, how that might impact the metrics for your work in this area.
Thank you for the question, through your worship. So our focus, irrespective of attainable or housing for all, the biggest component for us right now is to incorporate provisions within the official plan update, and ways to basically either require or incentivize that form of housing, and it needs to be built in our official plan. There are other aspects of that we will continue to work off and we'll bring to council where possible, where there's other opportunities, but that's where the focus is right now. And whether you use the firm attainable, affordable, or housing for all, I think it's housing for all is what we're really trying to achieve, and we'll work through.
Important document. Anything further from council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of receiving this report for information purposes? And that is carried. Thank you. Moving on now to...
Madam Mayor,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. We have Courtney with us, but unfortunately he does have to go at 2:30. So I was wondering if we could take the fire report before the fees and charges.
That's certainly agreeable to me.
Thank you.
Move on to that then. We'll go on to COM 2022-02, the Fire Services Annual Report for 2021. And the recommendation being said to Committee of the Whole, receive this report, Fire Services Annual Report, for information purposes. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table? Councillor Bell, Councillor Bartley. And we will welcome Courtney, Fire Chief Allen, to join us today and comment first off. Very, very thorough and informative report. Thank you very much for taking the time to pull that together and bring it forward to us. So, floor is yours.
Just wanted
Council,
to say,
did you want to speak to it first?
I can
This is the first time I've seen it.
I can just quickly run through it. Just wanted to first say thank you very much to Matt Smith and Brittany, who helped me pull it together. We have the tools available to pull this information from FirePro, which is really great. We also reached out to ITFD, so I worked very closely with the fire chief of ITFD to start pulling this information and trying to have a consistent way of sharing it. So this report isn't just half of Meaford, it is all of Meaford, with the expectation that we'll do even better at the next report as we align our reporting models. So even though we have two different fire pros and we have different kind of way the information is being gathered, we worked very hard to try to get it so it was simple and comparative. So you have a really good idea of kind of what ITFD is doing and what Meaford Fire is doing for the municipality. If you notice, there's a set of maps there that will really kind of hit home. Unfortunately, those are only Meaford Fire. My expectation is in the next quarter, we'll have ITFD in there as well. Really shows kind of the impact that we had in the last year within Meaford. There isn't a street that we almost didn't respond onto in one form or another. Even though we were in COVID and we had a number of lockdowns, when we saw a real slowdown in our calls, we still had an uptake from the previous year and finished at 215 calls. And with my expectation working more closely with ITFD and ITFD working more closely with us, responding to fires and other activities, that those numbers will go up next year by another 15 to 20 calls. So the fire departments are working closer together, and that means we're going to have a lot more unfortunately, costs, but it's better for the municipality and the residents that are within the borders.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Courtney. Our questions from council, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Chief Allen, for your report. It's really great to see these and to know that council will have opportunity to view them on an ongoing basis. And I just wanted to start by saying what a long way we've come. It's quite a turnabout, and pleases me very much. I just wanted to ask Chief Allen, some new equipment, I believe, is on the way, and understanding COVID and the restrictions and so on. But I'm wondering at some point if council could come and have a tour and see the new equipment when it arrives and it's ready for viewing.
Absolutely, that would be grand. And considering that we're coming out of the lockdown now, we can definitely do that. My expectations is the new equipment will be in place and operational within the next 2 to 3 weeks. So anytime after kind of the last week of February, we can set something up.
Okay, thank you for that. I wondered, Chief, if you could do just a quick discussion between the difference between mutual aid agreements and automatic aid agreements for our listening public. That was could have caused some confusion.
Mutual aid is when we request for support on a call, and we basically reach out and say we need you, at which point they say, yep, we have the resources, we can definitely respond, or sorry, we don't have enough resources, you're on your own. And it also comes to a point where they don't actually charge us for the services being provided. We have to provide services in like for a mutual aid. So for example, if we provide tankers, the other municipality that's providing that mutual aid must be able to provide tankers to us. So it's kind of a give and take. Prime example, we have a ladder. So a mutual aid may come in effect for Blue Mountains because they have a ladder and they may require us to respond into the area, where ITFD can't really ask for that service as it's not a like for like. An automatic aid agreement actually is put in place to agree on that they will respond into a certain area automatically no matter what. So we, for example, have an automatic aid agreement with Blue Mountains for about 150 different municipality housing. And the reason for that is because they're the closest station to those. And then we can set terms in those automatic aid agreements. For example, for those houses, if the call comes in, Meaford responds and so does Blue Mountains, so that we're both going to that location. And then whoever gets there first basically takes care of the call and just make sure that we get there within a reasonable amount of time. And then it also sets up other items. For example, we're working very hard with a new automatic aid agreement with ITFD, where, for example, if there's a fire anywhere in Meaford, that the ladder automatically rolls to any structure fire. Every member in Meaford pays for the ladder, so they should have access to that ladder no matter what happens within the municipality. And in turn of that automatic agreement, if we have a fire here in Meaford, I'm bringing in ITFD to help us fight that fire. We own both fire departments. We should be utilizing them. So that's in the automatic aid agreement. It'd be like living in Toronto, but not allowing the two stations to work together.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Chief Allen. You've just answered 3/4 of my question. The other part of it, on the automatic aid to the town of Blue Mountains, is there a fee involved with that? We show up, we get paid, or?
It depends on the situation. A lot of the times there is no cost associated to it. If there is, for example, if we do have a large scale fire and Blue Mountains have to put a lot of effort in, they will charge us for it. But the plan is under the Fire Mark program, we'd be able to recoup that cost, which if you notice in the report this year, we actually were able to recoup almost $66,000 from insurance companies in regard to firefighting services this year.
Are we talking homes that are in the Blue Mountains for them 160 homes?
No, they are Meaford homes.
They're Meaford homes.
Correct.
So why would we have an automatic aid to go to them? We should be going to them anyways.
Because they're closer. So we still go to them. It's just if someone's having a heart attack, if a house is on fire, if you have a car accident, you want somebody there as soon as possible. So they leave the station a little bit quicker than they do because they're closer than we are. They arrive on scene, we show up anywhere from 4 to 5 minutes after they do. If it's a small fire, we work on it together and put it out. If it's something else, then we can take over from the Blue Mountains and kick them off so that we continue on with the call.
Okay, thanks. I was under the impression these were Blue Mountain homes, not Meaford homes. Thank you.
Yeah, Meaford homes.
You might remember, Madam Mayor or members of council, we actually made that automatic aid agreement last year with the town of Blue Mountains. Previously, it had been what's called a fee-for-service arrangement, where we paid Blue Mountains to come and be in charge of those calls. And so as we went through the process this year on their request, Chief Allen and I, along with our counterparts over in Blue Mountains, decided that an automatic aid agreement was the best option, precisely so we get the Meaford team out there as well, so that if there's a significant event, we've got 2 sets of people there. The other benefit of that is that if it's a more minor event and we've got Meaford rolling as well as Blue Mountains, then our staff can take over, thereby reducing what we have to pay to Blue Mountains to get them to come to us.
Thanks, Matt, and thank you. One more quick question. Actually, it may not be so quick. You did mention that there were funds that had come in from Firemark, and this is in your report as well. And this has caused some confusion sometimes, or lack of understanding, I guess, on the role and the relationship with Firemark. And I wonder if you could enlighten us on that front as well.
So Firemark truly is a phenomenal program. Everybody pays insurance or should pay insurance or fire insurance for their home. We'll take my house, for example. I hope it never burns, but I have a policy that I carry with on my home. And as part of my policy, I pay every year for firefighting services, so that if I ever do require firefighting services, that the insurance company will pay for firefighting services. Unfortunately, a lot of the time, municipalities don't access those funds from insurance companies, which means insurance companies get to keep billions of dollars in which they've charged each and every one of us for. So what we do is we pay Firemark to go to those insurance companies to make sure that we're collecting that particular piece. If someone doesn't have insurance or does not have that rider on their insurance, we do not charge the homeowner. It's only if there's actually an insurance rider that has that specific coverage. In this case, a lot of commercial establishments will have a large rider on board and will pay for all the firefighting services what we provide, time, trucks, and equipment. When we receive that particular money as part of the agreement that we have, is that it has to go back to training, equipment, or fire prevention, all which are beneficial not only to the municipality, but also to the insurance company, obviously making us more effective as a fire department and hopefully reducing risk for the insurance company. So it's a real win-win for the municipality. We only pay for Firemark when we utilize them and they collect money for us. Unfortunately, it's not easy just to go to an insurance company and go, hi, we're putting a claim in. It can get quite complicated, so they take on that role for us.
Mm-hmm. Very good. We've had that program in place now for several years.
Well, just to let you know, for this year, we were actually able to buy a bunch of equipment. One of the big things I'm trying to focus on for the next 3 years is to increase our rural firefighting capabilities. As we work more closely with ITFD, we're going to be going out to more rural calls. And Meaford is 80% rural. So we have to make sure that we are able to provide the same level of service to those people as we do to the city. We do phenomenal service within the urban. I want to make sure we're able to bring that same level to the urban. So we were able to actually buy a bunch of equipment this year to really up our game this year on how we respond to those rural calls.
Super. Thank you for that. Any further questions from council? Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of receiving this report for information purposes, and that is carried. Thank you so much, and we look forward to hearing from you on a regular basis.
Thank you very much.
Now we can move on to the 2022 fees and charges bylaw. The recommendation reads that Committee of the Whole receive the proposed 2022 fees and charges bylaw, and that following the public meeting, enact a bylaw to establish the fees and charges for municipal services, programs, and facilities for the year 2022. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley and Councillor Greenfield, thank you. Very straightforward and in-depth report again. Any questions for staff on this? The Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions, if I may. And again, and it'll come up certainly this evening in our budget discussions. But I'm just going to ask at this point, do we think that there will ever come a point when our water and sewer rates will actually kind of stabilize? Will we have enough growth that we won't have to continue long term with the 8% increases?
Yeah,
Rob,
Your Worship,
one for you.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We brought a long-term financial plan to council about a year ago. And it spoke about our long-term needs on the water and sewer rate. And as the council recall, I think last year it was suggesting that there should be a 25% increase. And some years it's less. So what that report that came to council to talk about our long-term planning is that try to balance it at 8% per year. Obviously, as we get growth and get more development on existing services, not expanded services, we'll take advantage and see reductions of that based on additional users and a long-term impact. But over the next little bit, I think what that report identified is that the average of 8 is really what we need, unless something else happens with regard to that we're not aware of at this point in time.
Okay. And Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Your Worship. And my question has to do with the Meaford water distribution system, page 3 of 4. It says there, so in previous years, was there just a flat rate for the hookups? Or am I misunderstanding it? It looks to be there was a minimum charge, and then it says to be deleted beside it. So was there at least a flat rate before, and we're changing it to strictly what the costs are going to be?
I may get Jessica or Rob to try and help me with this one, but yes, in essence, previously we said that it was a certain amount, that there was a minimum that people had to pay, and then we charged them the full rate. What's happening now, I believe, is that we are going to take a security deposit. The residents will get a contractor to do the work themselves, and then we will return that security deposit if they've returned the road or the sidewalk or whatever it may be back to the condition that it was beforehand. So we won't take money as an income because we won't actually be doing the work, so we won't have to pay people to do that work.
Yep. That makes
stamp of approval.
Yes. And obviously that makes sense, right? It just seemed a bit convoluted the way it was before.
Any further questions on fees and charges? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation as presented, and that is carried. Moving on to financial services, FIN 2022-01, the recommendation is the Committee of the Whole transfer the remaining $307,100 of the Pelt settlement to the Tax Stabilization Reserve, and 2, transfer the 2021 operating surplus to the Tax Stabilization Reserve, and 3, provide an update report to Council when the amount of the 2021 operating surplus is determined. I have a mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Yes, and this was, there was a subsequent letter that the CAO distributed on when it arrived late on Friday, and that added a little bit more context to this issue. Just wondering if there's any comments, questions of staff? Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a comment and a question. I brought this up, and I'm really glad. I like the clarity that come out of this. I brought it up because we were the ones that stuck our neck out and said, yes, let's fight for this money. It could have been egg in our face, but it turned out all right. I wanted a chance to be able to spend this money, and what staff has come up with suits me just fine. I think it's a good use of the money that we've got left. So that's my comment. My question would be on item C, solar installation, Rob. Have we started that yet?
Your worship, no, we haven't started the solar installation. Actually, Matt and I were talking about this last week, and we're going to reach out to our facilities project manager when he comes back to us on the 14th about proceeding with that and taking the next steps. Just with regard to the PILT, and I do want to apologize to council in that as we went through this budget, we didn't make it very clear that the additional funding that we were taking from reserves was actually PILT reserves, and we going forward we'll just make sure that it's very clear within the project sheets that that reserve funding that it was intended to be where it was from. In that clarity, we probably would have clarified that in the 2 days. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it, but I do apologize that we did not do that as part of the presentations.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Further questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the question. All in favor of the recommendation as presented. And that is carried. Thank you very much. And that moves us on to the building report for the end of year. And I'm sure Councillor Greenfield will have something to say about this. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Your Worship. Yes, and a really outstanding report, Your Worship. If you go back to a year ago, when our province was in the middle of a lockdown, and people were being told to stay at home, and even construction was cautioned, although not eliminated. Projects were allowed to go ahead. I had to admit back then, I thought, oh boy, what's this going to do to our numbers? But our numbers for 2021 have been just fantastic. 54 new homes, multi-residential numbers up astronomically, everything up. A grand total of just over $101 million of building permits, and that is just a fantastic number. And I think it's well representative of this municipality. I've said it before, but I'll say it again, people want to invest in the municipality of Meaford. They want to see us grow. They want to see us flourish. And these kind of numbers, I don't know how you dispute them. They're very positive, and I'm going to be a little bold and say, hey, look, they're going to continue. There are better things to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greenfield. And moving on now to updates from our council members. First one, of course, is County Council, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And just to let everyone know that County Council met on Thursday last week for our regular meeting, and then on Friday for a budget meeting. So I'll just give both reports at once. And I would have to say our meeting last Thursday, and I hope you'll agree, Your Worship, was probably one of the most interesting and informative meetings that I've had the privilege of attending. Committee of the Whole began with a motion from Councillor Mackey Mayor of Chatsworth. And the request was support for the creation of a mental health and addictions task force for Grey County. Councillor Mackey and others spoke to the need for action on this. As we all know, access to treatment and resources is not sufficient to meet the current need in Grey County. This task force will address a local response to gaps in treatment options, wait lists, funding to support system enhancements, and advocacy to provincial and federal levels of government. The formation of this task force is timely after the recent lives lost too soon in our own community, and a very successful Bell Let's Talk Day last week for $8 million was raised. The motion passed unanimously. Council learned that our clerk of 32 years, Heather Morrison, will be retiring June 17th. Heather's been a dedicated support for council for many years. She will be greatly missed. Tanya Roberts, Grey Bruce Coordinator and Facilitator for the Dual Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, presented next. 72 groups and organizations have been part of the planning table described as a strategic alliance of human services. This team, through the information gathered from 861 survey responses and experience gained from their own professional roles, created a list of 5 priorities. They are mental health, addiction and substance abuse, crime prevention, housing and homelessness, and poverty low income. The website for the county plan is www.cswbp.ca. You'll find the detailed report and the implementation plan there. John Leckie, Chair, and Rob Peacock, CEO of our Meaford Hospital Foundation, provided County Council an excellent and detailed overview of their work. Many of you will recall how desperate this municipality was a few short years ago as we lobbied to save our hospital from closure. Much has changed. We were assured with recent large donations and through the efforts of our community that this hospital is on a very sustainable path. 500,000 lab procedures were performed in 2021. 95% of the patients at our hospital reside in Grey County. The request from Mr. Leckie and Mr. Peacock was for council to consider a 5-year financial support in the amount of $250,000. We didn't discuss that on Thursday, but that will come back to us. Grey County Council does have a 0.75% in our budget for healthcare funding. County Council also heard a very concerning report from Bark Beatty, Community Drug and Alcohol Strategy Update. There was much discussion on best approaches to our other pandemic, the opioid crisis. The calls to action through this strategy revolve around enhancing harm reduction activities, safe supply, education, coordination of resources and service providers, expanding naloxone distribution, and providing additional training for support staff, and the creation as well of a grief and loss support plan, along with advocacy for policy changes at both provincial and federal levels. There was a question about how this effort ties in with the CSWBP, and we understand this work will funnel up through the plan where financial support can be applied for from the province. The hope is that eventually pharmaceuticals will replace toxic street drugs as a pathway to overall health care. Decriminalization is also under discussion. So that was Thursday. And County Council met again on Friday, and we were there to review the 2022 budget. The requested increase from Grey County is 2.88%. The 291-page budget document can be found on the website. Just in a nutshell, $186.6 million is required to deliver Grey County services. Budget consists of $136 million for operating and $51 million for capital. So $63,527,000 needs to be raised through taxation. The assessment growth for 2021 at the county was $1,184,400, which was slightly less than 2020. Some of the main expenditures will be $16 million for road reconstruction and resurfacing, $1.3 million for enhanced fire and radio communications, $927,000 for stone dusting sections of the CP Rail Trail, $5.5 million for capital work on Grey housing projects, $1 million to Georgian College for the implementation of the new 4-year nursing program, 1% or $622,700 for our commitment to affordable housing projects, and also support for 59.7 full-time equivalent positions at the county's 3 long-term care homes to meet the provincial requirements for increased resident care. The province does contribute to that expense. The increase equates to $10.48 per $100,000 of assessment. So for an average assessed home, the increase at the county level is $29.30. And that's it for those 2 reports, Your Worship.
Well done, Deputy Mayor. Thanks. That was certainly a heavy-duty County Council week. And we'll move on now to the other reports. Councillor Greenfield.
Thank you again, Your Worship. It's amazing how elusive that little microphone down in the bottom corner can get when you're trying to hit it. We did have Grey Sauble Conservation Authority last Wednesday afternoon, and I'll ask Councillor Vickers to jump in and help me on this one. It started out with our annual general meeting, and I'm pleased to announce that Scott Gregg from Owen Sound, councillor, was once again appointed as our chair, and Councillor Andrea Matrasovs from the Blue Mountains once again appointed as our deputy chair, and I think everyone was quite pleased with those appointments. They were unanimous. A couple of things during the meeting. It was a bit of a review of 2021, but the authority did approve having a member or 2 on the Grey County Federation of Agriculture, and I give credit to Councillor Vickers for bringing this forward and pursuing it with the Conservation Authority. It's something that we likely should have been doing several years ago, but thanks to Paul, he pushed this, and I think it's going to be great to have that communication with the OFA and the local component. Because of increased planning responsibilities, and certainly our municipality is quite familiar with that, we did find it necessary to add another, I'm not going to try to get the official name, but basically another planner to our staff over in Grey Sauble. It's going to be a bit of an adjustment for the budget. I think we can cover it all right. Certainly the fees, the applications have been very, very numerous, and as a result, the fees have been coming in, and so I think we're going to be okay there. Certainly a very, very busy time for our planning department. And we had a forestry fee update, bit of increase, not a lot, but we're hoping that will help out with our revenues. Paul, can you help me? What have I missed?
Yeah, Harley, I think he always did a great job. Yeah, I think it's called the Grey Sauble Agriculture Advisory Committee. And the OFA is just one of the members on it. They're also membership from the Grey County, the UFA, the Union Farmers, it's not UFA. I think it is the Union Farmers Association, and also the Christian Farmers Federation, plus a few other at-large members that sit on this committee. And basically it's just an advisory committee to try and help bridge the gap between agriculture and the Conservation Authority. Sometimes we do clash a little bit, our 2 industries, but we're looking at ways to try and improve it and to help each other, because obviously the agriculture community is the largest landowner in the Grey Sauble watershed. So it's important that we work together. And to be quite honest, and of course I'm a bit biased, but I think a lot of agriculture people and farmers are also very good conservationists. So it's a group that we sometimes clash together, hoping to get the same results in the end. So I think it is, like you said, it's going to add a lot, and it should be a committee that can really help both sectors kind of survive and prosper. So and your talk about the not the developers, the people that review the applications, they have, just like our own community, you talked about how much $100 million worth of development. A lot of that all has to go through the Grey Sauble too. So they are busy, and we need to support them and make sure that they have the tools to do their jobs. So that was just a couple of things I thought I'd add in there, Harley.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Bell, I know there was a BIA. Was there a BIA this week?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. There was. It was on the 12th of January, and I'd like to begin by saying that again we were successful in having a quorum. Unfortunately, we received a resignation of one of our members, but we've also been told that there's other interested parties, and I'm sure that their name and so on will be brought forward to council. The biggest thing that they were working on was their basic budget item. So council again will see it in its entirety when it's totally complete. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, in the background. I'm running this from my business, so I'm going to exit. It was a good meeting.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, I think I saw your hand.
Your Worship, yes, I thought we should give an update on Roma. Those of us who were able last week, Monday and Tuesday, attended the virtual Roma conference. So I would just say a couple of things and ask anyone else to join in. With an excellent conference. And I would say the main focuses were affordable housing and climate change. On the Roma, and I should share for anyone listening, Roma stands for Rural Ontario Municipality Associations. And on their website, and you can just Google Roma, you'll find their most recent report, which was unveiled at the conference, Opportunities for Rural Ontario in a Post-COVID World. In a nutshell, the priorities from that report are digital connectivity, housing, infrastructure, meeting demand for services, better funding arrangements with the province and the federal government, labor force concerns, and recovery from COVID lockdowns. There are 23 recommendations in the report. It's a good read. And I was just going to add that probably the most encouraging session for me was the one on Tuesday on affordable housing with Julia Deans and Michael Labbe. And it was a discussion about potential for partnerships and collaboration with different organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, and the realization that they can strongly participate in helping us get some of these projects off the ground. So I'll turn it over to anyone else who was at the conference.
Thank you. I was there as well on behalf of the county and found it all very, very interesting and informative. One of the things that the messages that caught my attention was the pivoting, they're calling it, from a hub and spoke focus on various collaborative issues and changing the, I guess, the tone and the working verbiage for it into more of a networking situation and opportunity. And it's certainly using that in terms of going forward for things like partnerships in primary health care and long-term care and all of these various concerns that we're all very much interested in. So it really was a very worthwhile, short 2-day conference, but intense, and I enjoyed it as well. And with that, I see no further hands up, so we'll move on to out of a motion to move out of committee of the whole. May I have a mover, please, and a seconder? Councillor Greenfield, Councillor Bartley at 2:43. Thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And the next into 10 on our point 10 on our agenda is councillor motions. Are there any notices of motion coming forward? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yes, I'd like to provide a notice of motion with a request for staff to have a look at outdated signage on municipal lands, anywhere businesses are closed or events are long over, or there's no formal agreements for those signs on our municipal lands. So that will be my notice.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to bring forward a motion to support an application that will be coming forward from our Dr. Brian McCoskey for a family health team in our area. And that will be forthcoming next meeting as well. Anything further? Councillor Kentner.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. That does take a while to unmute those things. I don't know if a motion is necessary, but if it is, I would serve a notice of motion to help out the United Way of Grey Bruce by linking their new tool to our website.
Okay.
That doesn't need a motion, Mayor Clumpus. That's just if they provide us the link, then I'm sure our communications team will put it in an appropriate place.
Good.
Thank you, Matt. That would be my guess as well. Thanks for that. And so now then we will move on to motions for decision. And the first one is from Councillor Kentner regarding joint and several liability. I'm assuming, Councillor Kentner, you'll put that on the floor?
Yes.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bartley? And the floor is yours, Councillor Kentner.
I won't take long. Back in April, Councillor Bartley moved that we support the drive to get the province to act on joint and several liability. And there was an undertaking by Mr. Ford to do this, but the provincial election is looming, and so far there's been no action. So this is just simply a motion to try and send a notice to AMO and all the other affected parties that we want action on this very serious problem for all municipalities in Ontario.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comment, Councillor Bartley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And again, Councillor Kentner, thanks for bringing this up. This is important. This means a lot of money to every municipality. And I think as councillors for the municipality, I think each one of us should write a letter to our MPP, letting them know that this needs to be looked at, and it needs to be looked at now. Thank you.
Thank you. Being further? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor of this motion as presented? And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward, and thank you for the support. And the second one, again, Councillor Kentner, you'll bring this one forward, will you?
I will. And this is more than anything, just a sort of a housekeeping motion. Can
I have a seconder, please, before I ask you to? Thank you, Councillor Bell. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Kentner.
Sure. More than anything, just a housekeeping motion so that at the beginning of each new term, council can look back, have a briefing on all of the outstanding councillor directions, and sort of pick and choose what they want to advance. And if there are things that are more or less redundant or not considered important at this point in time, something that's maybe been around for 2 or 3 or 4 years, that they can vote to just shorten the list.
Thank you for that. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, fairly straightforward. I'll call the question. All in favor? moving this ahead, and that is carried as well. Moving on to point 11 on our agenda is the adoption of the minutes. The first one is a council meeting of January the 10th. Be it resolved that the Council of Meaford hereby adopt the minutes of the council meeting held January 10th, 2022. Mover and a seconder, please, to put that on the table. Councillor Bell and Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any comments, questions? All in favor of that? Those minutes, and that is carried. Again, council meeting of January the 17th. I need a mover and a seconder to put that on the table. Councillor Bartley, Councillor Greenfield. And again, any questions or comments on those sets of minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. And then there's the closed meeting of January the 10th. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Vickers, Deputy Mayor, thank you. If we need further discussion on this, we'll have to go into in camera. Any discussion needed? Then I'll call the question. All in favor of receiving these closed minutes, and that is carried. Is there anything on in the communications list? They have the Grey County Council minutes, business improvement area minutes, and a correspondence list. Anything that a member of council would like to pull? And seeing none, we will mark these as received. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of our business of this council meeting. And I will declare this meeting adjourned, and we will reconvene at 6:30 this evening for a planning meeting, public planning meeting. So until then, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and thank you. Oops, Councillor, yes, sorry, Rob.
Your Worship, it's not a planning meeting. It's actually our statutory public meeting for the budget.
Of course it is. Cup of tea time. My apologies, I'm used to that. A statutory public meeting on our budget, and we will all reconvene then at that time. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon.